Explain. A few hundred of the wealthiest families in this country, $235 billion tax break. Explain to the American people why you think that's a great idea.
That's just not correct, because the top 10% paid a bigger share of taxes.
Do you know how many people, and I was surprised to hear this, I don't know if you know it or not, how many people lose their jobs every year, quit, get fired or whatever? Do you have any idea?
Senator Bernie Sanders confronts the Trump administration over a tax plan that hands billions to the richest families in America while threatening health care for millions of working people.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Bessent, for being here. Help me out here. My understanding is the Trump administration has, I think, 13 billionaires in office right now, leading government agencies. Is that about right, do you think?
I have no idea, Senator.
I think that's what the number is. Do you think it's a coincidence, given the large number of billionaires in the Trump administration, that this particular piece of legislation would provide $235 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2% by expanding the exemptions in the estate tax?
Senator, I will tell you that when the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, my tax rate went up.
Well, I don't know your exact situation, but I can tell you. Tell me about how many people do you think are in the top 0.2%?
Sorry?
Number of people in the top 0.2% who would benefit from this particular $235 billion tax break.
Well, I know the top 10% is
right.
now paying 7%.
That's not the question.
The total tax.
My question is, why do you think at a time of unprecedented income and wealth inequality, when people like yourself economically have never, ever had it so good, why do you think it's a good idea to cut Medicaid for low-income and working-class people by $700 billion, to give $235 billion in tax breaks to the very, very, very richest people in this country, perhaps a few hundred families? Please justify that and tell me about that.
Well, Senator, I don't know, but the Democrats had the trifecta, and there was no tax increase or wealth tax on billionaires. You choose.
I'm not talking about a tax.
You chose not to do that.
Mr. Bessent, I am not talking about a wealth tax. Explain. A few hundred of the wealthiest families in this country, $235 billion tax break. Explain to the American people why you think that's a great idea.
I think that this will increase small businesses substantially. That most small businesses, they are...
Has zero to do, come on, you're smarter than that. This is the top 0.2%. This is not a mom and pop store. These are multi-billionaires, and the savings go to their kids after they pass away. This is nothing more than a gift to billionaires in this country.
Well, sir, that's just not correct, because the top 10% paid a bigger share of taxes after TCJA.
I'm talking about one provision in this. I don't want to argue with you about taxes in general. One provision, few hundred families, $235 billion in tax breaks. You can't justify that because morally it is totally unjustifiable. Let me ask you another question. If you guys want to cut $1 trillion in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, the estimate from CBO, I believe, is that over 15 million people lose their health insurance. Yale University and the University of Pennsylvania estimated that when you throw that many low-income and working-class people off of health care, some 50,000 people a year will die. Tell me why you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and allow 50,000 low-income and working-class people to die unnecessarily?
Senator, first of all, that's overstated by 5.1 million. That is not attributed to this bill. It is simply
It's a combination. That's true.
No. You all had a scheduled expiration of Obamacare subsidies, and you did not extend that when you were in charge. 5.1 million, 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid.
All right,
and there are work requirements. And our goal is to get more money to children and mothers.
Really? Your goal is to get more money to children, and working people. Really? Come on. Do you know how many people, and I was surprised to hear this, I don't know if you know it or not, how many people lose their jobs every year, quit, get fired or whatever? Do you have any idea?
Well, there's something called the quits rate, and so when the job market is strong, more people quit.
But yeah, I was surprised that I just researched this. I don't know. Do you happen to know?
I don't know the number.
I was surprised. Would it be shocking to you? It was to me. 20 million people leave their jobs a year. Doesn't shock you, right? It's a big labor force, right?
Yep.
So some guy leaves the job, maybe they move, maybe something happens in their lives, right? We have a lot of transition in the labor market, correct?
Maybe they get a better job.
Right, exactly, maybe they do. Or maybe They have to stay home, their wife gets sick, whatever, we don't know. But 20 million people lose their jobs in a given year, leave their jobs in a given year. Are those people lazy? What happens when I leave my job and maybe I have to move to another state to take care of my ill mother, and I desperately need Medicaid? Am I too lazy now to be able to get Medicaid?
I think that's a mischaracterization of the work requirement.
Really? Well, I'm not quite so sure it is.
What you just watched is one of those moments where politics stops feeling abstract and becomes a moral showdown. Senator Bernie Sanders isn't arguing numbers for the sake of argument. He's confronting an entire ideology rooted in the belief that the wealthiest people in America, a tiny fraction of a percent, deserves yet another massive tax giveaway, even if it comes at the direct expense of millions of low-income and working-class Americans who depend on Medicaid to survive. Moments like this force us to ask what kind of country we want to be and who government is supposed to serve. Because, let's be clear, when Sanders talks about the top 0.2%, he's talking about a few hundred families, literally the wealthiest heirs in the nation, receiving a $250 billion tax break simply because they inherited enormous fortunes. And Sanders does what Democrats do best when they're at their sharpest. He strips away the political branding, the talking points, the deflections, and gets right to the moral core of the issue. Why should billionaires get richer while millions lose health care? Why is the government bending over backwards to protect generational wealth while cutting support from people who are simply trying to live, work, and support their families? And notice what happens when Sanders presses for a clear answer. The witness can't justify it. Instead, he pivots, deflects, blames Democrats, throws out stray statistics, and brings up unrelated issues. Anything to avoid the uncomfortable truth that this policy isn't about helping small businesses or strengthening the economy. It is about protecting the richest of the rich at a moment when inequality in America is already at historic levels. This is why Sanders keeps bringing the conversation back to real people, not corporations, not billionaires, not abstract economic theories. Real people who lose their jobs, have to care for a sick parent, get laid off unexpectedly, or face a medical crisis they can't predict or prevent. Sanders points out something most politicians never talk about. Millions of Americans cycle in and out of jobs every year, not because they're lazy, but because life happens. And when life happens, you shouldn't lose your health care. That's the human reality behind the policy. The Trump-era philosophy Sanders is calling out operates from the opposite direction. It assumes that if you're struggling, you've done something wrong, that if you need Medicaid, you must be lazy or unwilling to work, and that if you are wealthy, you deserve even more, even if that money comes from cutting healthcare coverage for the people who need it most. Sanders brings the conversation back to the moral consequences, tens of thousands of unnecessary deaths every year, not hypotheticals, not abstractions, people with names, families, communities. This hearing exposes the divide between two competing visions of America. One vision argues that the richest should get tax breaks because they've earned it, and that social programs should be slashed because people must simply work harder. The other vision, represented here by Sanders, says a nation is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable, not how much it caters to its billionaires. And when he presses the witness to justify a $235 billion gift to a handful of wealthy families while cutting Medicaid for millions, the silence tells the real story. This is why hearings like this matter. They pull back the curtain. They force public officials to answer questions that rarely get asked, and even more rarely get answered honestly. And it reminds us that behind every policy debate is a moral choice about what kind of America we want to build. If you value leaders who actually challenge the wealthy and powerful, who fight for working people, and who aren't afraid to name injustice when they see it, then make sure you're subscribed, engaged, and sharing videos like this. These moments don't just educate, they shape public pressure, shift narratives, and expose policies that hope to pass silently in the shadows. Stay tuned, stay informed, and let's keep pushing for a government that works for the many, not the billionaire few.